we waiting on?
Okay, being live streamed.
Yep.
Okay, got it.
Yep. So it's working, Robin. Perfect. And very good. So I'm the host now, and we enabled, yes, we have the closed captioning. Good. Okay, so we are waiting on Mark, Eric, Andrew, Tobin, pretty much everybody else, and Tori. Okay, great. There's Clean North. And there's Nyree. Very good. And we got Andre. And we have Donna. Hi, Nyree.
Hey.
How you doing?
Good. How about you?
Very good, thanks. We're going to get rolling shortly. We're just waiting for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 more people, but they technically have 2 minutes.
Sounds good.
Hi, Bill.
Hi, Emily. Is it okay that I'm logged on now, or would you prefer
Yes.
I log in later?
It's best that you're on now because I'm going to get into the thick of things, and it's good that you're in the background. As I mentioned, it's going to be orientation at the get-go, but then we'll get to you when we get to you.
Very good.
Okay, good to see you, Bill. Hi, Tobin.
Hello, good afternoon.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm well, thank you.
Good.
We are just waiting on 4 more. But 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We'll get going. We'll just give it another minute or so for the few who are missing, and we'll dive right in. Okay, there's Travis. Just give it another minute. Three, 4, 5, 6. Okay. Hi, Tori. We are good for quorum. We are missing Mark, Eric, and Andrew. but we can go ahead and get going here. Okay, so without further ado, welcome everyone to the first Environmental Sustainability Committee meeting of 2023. I'm going to call the meeting to order here at 4:01. Before we begin, I'd like to acknowledge with respect, though we are gathered virtually, that we are on Robinson Huron Treaty territory, and the land on which we are gathered is the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe. Oh, pardon me, I've got to let a couple of people into the meeting here. Known as Bowading. Bowading is home of Garden River First Nation, Batchewana First Nation, the historic Sault Ste. Marie Métis Council. Now, I believe we can begin in a good way. Okay, it looks like everybody is here. I've let a few more folks in. So that's just great. Now, before we dive into the full meeting here and adopt the minutes, etc., I wanted to just take a minute to go around and let everyone introduce themselves briefly. We have a couple of returning committee members. We have a couple of new committee members, and I'm really excited to work with you all. So I'm just going to go through my list here. I might start with myself and Travis, who are also from the city. So you guys know me. I'm Emily Cormier. I'm the Sustainability Coordinator. Travis?
Hi, everyone. My name is Travis Anderson. I'm the Director of Tourism and Community Development.
Thank you, Travis. Okay, now we're going to ask Mark. Mark, can you introduce yourself, please? You're on mute.
As I'm talking to myself on mute. Yes, my name is Mark Britton. What else do you want me to say?
Where do you work, Mark?
Where do I work? I work at PUC,
Great. Doing
business development and conservation and demand management to an extent still, I guess.
Thanks, Mark. And this is your second term on the committee.
This is my second term. You think I'd be better at this now?
All
the
good.
Second time.
All good. Okay, we're going to go to Donna next.
Hi, Donna Hilsinger, member of the committee in the last couple of years, work in the tourism and hospitality industry.
Thanks, Donna. Andrew Judge.
Hi, everybody. Andrew here. I'm faculty at Algoma, and I teach in Anishinaabe Studies.
Thank you, Andrew. Welcome. Tobin.
Great. Sorry, just had to find the unmute button there. I'm Tobin Kern. I work in education. I'm a member with Sioux Climate Hub, and I want to see everything our community can do to reduce its greenhouse gas emissions. So I'm very excited to be here. Thanks.
Thanks, Tobin. Welcome. Tori.
Hi, everyone. I'm Tori Proust. Happy to be back in the Sioux. I'm an urban planner and currently working as a senior policy advisor with MTO in their Emerging Technologies office, focusing mostly leading on low carbon mobility files.
Thanks, Tori. Welcome. Andre. Not sure if Andre he is here, but I know he might have some trouble with his mic. So I'm happy to give a brief intro for Andre. Oops, I just had to let another person into the meeting. Moving parts. Okay, so this is Andre's second term with the committee, and he is a physiotherapist by profession. He's got a strong interest in public health, particularly between the relationship between health and the built environment. He's a very passionate advocate for active transportation. He's part of the Sioux Cycling Club. He's also a member of STAC. And yes, like I said, he is on the committee for a second term. Welcome, Andre. I see Eric has joined us. So Eric, over to you. Could you just provide us with a short intro on who you are and what you do?
Sure. Sorry that I'm late. I just had another meeting that ran a few minutes over.
All good.
I'm Eric Emelson. I'm a research scientist at the Great Lakes Forestry Center. So that's the Canadian Forest Service sector of Natural Resources Canada. And I am an aquatic ecologist, but I also study carbon cycling and environmental systems, especially forests. And I'm also returning as for a second term on this committee.
Thanks, Eric. Councillor Gardy.
Thanks, Emily. My name is Corey Gardy. I'm a city councillor. I guess I'm representing city council on this committee. I'm the city council for Ward 5, which is the west end of the community. And in my professional life, I'm the principal of a local element.
Thank you, Corey. All right, and last but not least, Nairi.
Hey, everyone. So I work at the MNRF at the Bonder Place, and I'm a senior policy advisor. I work on sustainable forest management policy and climate change policy. So that's why I applied to the group. I've worked on forest carbon in the past and figured that I could add some value here. Nice to meet you.
Thanks, Nairi. Welcome. So welcome to our returning members, and a very warm welcome to our new members. We have a wonderful array of skill sets around the table, and I look forward to getting to work and working with you all. So we're going to go into the more formal part of our meeting now. I will need a mover and a seconder to adopt the minutes from our last committee meeting, which was November 10th, 2022. And I'm probably looking to previous committee members. You've all received the agenda package sent to you. So can I have a mover for the minutes of the November 10th, 2022 meeting? I'll just ask that you raise your hand. I see Donna. Can I have a seconder? Mark. Very good. All in favor? Very good. Okay. Does anyone have any declarations of pecuniary interest, so conflicts of interest based on your understanding of the agenda? Okay, I'm not seeing any. So we're good to go. Now I need to adopt our agenda. So can I please have a mover for the adoption of our February 7th, 2023 agenda as presented to be approved? Donna, thank you. And can I have a seconder? Oh, Mark, was that a hand? Okay, great. Thanks, Mark. Okay, very good. All right, so this is our first committee meeting. It's going to be a lot of orientation materials, and we're going to go through it as quickly as we can. But I'm pleased to introduce the city's deputy clerk, Madison Zupa, who will now go over the City of Sault Ste. Marie meeting procedures. I have a presentation here that I'm going to pull up. Madison, welcome to the Environmental Sustainability Committee.
Thank you so much. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Plans kind of changed with the bus cancellation, so I'm in my home office, and I appreciate Emily helping me out with the slides because my computer isn't working, and follow else fails, right? But no, I appreciate you having me today to go over the meeting procedures for committees of council. I recognize a lot of people on the committee, and it looks like a fabulous group to be working with, and hope everyone is doing well. And it's nice to see some familiar faces on the committee. So I know it's going to do some great work. I'm going to speak quickly today about meeting procedures. So if you have any questions that I am not able to answer, please just let me know. And I'll work with Rachel to get a follow-up, but we're just going to do a quick run through. And Emily and I work closely together too on procedural matters when there's questions to be had, and we do our best in the clerk's office to provide some answers. So don't hesitate to ask. I can't guarantee I'll have all the answers today, but we'll do my best to provide some general feedback. So you can go ahead, Emily. Thanks.
Can everybody see them? Can they see the PowerPoint? Okay, very good. All right, sounds good.
Awesome. So boards and committees, local boards and committees of council include advisory and other committees or boards whose members are appointed by council for an ongoing purpose, and special committees appointed by council or the head of council at any time as is deemed necessary. So for the Environmental Sustainability Committee, members of the public have applied. Then the board and committee nominating task force will meet, and that's made up of a number of staff members as well as members of council to review all the applications. And then that task force, the recommendations are presented to council for appointment. So that was the process, just so that people know kind of how that happens. And then the appointments are made, and obviously we'll have our first meeting, which is today for this group. But there are other groups that get, or there are other boards and committees that get formed for special purposes, ad hoc committees, or special task force along the way as well. Next slide, please. So governance versus management. So council provides governance and oversight and planning. So the big picture stuff. So all their strategic planning gets done at that higher level. The operations are responsibility of staff. So the staff will bring those operational plans, strategies, and budget that align with the corporate strategic plan approved by council. So the operation part is the responsibility of staff. So often you'll give direction to staff to move forward with proposals for projects and bringing things to council, and those are typically done by staff members. That's not to say that there aren't special events where committee members will help out or participate and volunteer, but the operations of the committee are the responsibility of staff. The board in its advisory capacity then makes recommendation for council's consideration and approval. So you'll often have recommendations that come from the committee that go to council, and council is the decision maker on those matters. And there's a lot of boards and committees across the corporation that deal with a number of different topics and make recommendations to council on a variety of matters. Next slide. So from an accountability and transparency standpoint, there's a number of different pieces of legislation and policies and procedures that we are governed by. So the first, obviously, is the Municipal Act. The second is the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act, which we'll get into in a little bit, and the city's procedure bylaw, which we are going through today with some general tips to help your committee be effective and also follow the rules that are set out for City Council and its boards and committees. And the Code of Conduct, which if you don't already have a copy of, Emily, I can pass along a copy for circulation, which all members should read. There's a number of different elements that we'll get into later in the presentation, which the Code of Conduct covers. I just want to give everyone a heads up that we are currently doing a review of the Code of Conduct, and not only a local review with the City of Sault Ste. Marie, but there's also some feedback about throughout the pandemic, the province had released an input period for Code of Conducts in general. So we are looking to see the results of that at some point and see where the province will take that. But ultimately, we're going to look at our own too and do some review and revisions this year. So you'll see that come forward. And when those are approved by council, we'll recirculate them to all the committees. Okay, you can next slide, please. So the procedure bylaw 2022-100 is council's procedure bylaw, and it applies to the calling and proceedings of meetings of council and of local boards and committees. So the definition of a committee means any advisory or other committee, subcommittee, or similar entity of which at least 50% of the members are also members of one or more councils or local boards. So you will see other, task force that might not have 50% membership that are, special purpose task force, like there's a few that came up in the last little while. There's also local boards that don't apply, like the police services board or the public library boards. They're governed by different pieces of legislation, so they're not included as part of this procedure bylaw presentation. Next slide. So the definition of a meeting, the meeting means any regular, special, or meeting of a council or of a local board, of a committee, of either of them, where a quorum of members is present. And members discuss or otherwise deal with any matter in a way that materially advances the business of decision-making of the council, local board, or committee. So how many members do you have, Emily, in total?
9.
9. Okay, so there are going to be times likely outside of a formal meeting that you may, like if there's an event that's going on, you may have a quorum of members present, right? So you might have 5 people at an event out in the community, and that's fine. You can all be present in the same room, but be mindful not to materially advance any business of this committee. So there may be times where you are all together and you have quorum, but you need to make sure that you're not materially advancing the business or discussing anything that the committee might deal with at a meeting of the committee. Otherwise, you're not having a properly open meeting. And this also applies to group email discussions. So group email discussions can constitute a meeting. So if you send out an email to all of the committee members or a majority of committee members, then that can constitute a meeting and should not occur because it can't meet the criteria for open meetings. The public cannot observe the, the decision making in action, right? So just be mindful when you're emailing not to advance the business of the committee through group emails. Next slide. So the agenda is set by the chair in consultation with staff resource. It's posted to the city website at least 24 hours in advance. We like to have it a week as ideal or as far ahead as possible, but knowing too that some materials come in within maybe a few days before rather than a week. So, we're hoping for a week, but 24 hours for sure. And that includes all attachments. So any kind of presentations, we want to make sure the public is seeing all the information that the committee members are seeing for the open meetings. Business considered in order set forth on agenda. And it's not as formal in committees where, if you see something that you want to address first, you can certainly do that. And the chair may vary the agenda items. And a member may ask that a motion is placed on the agenda, provided they have a seconder. So you can have motions that come up as long as you have a seconder. If it's of a substantive nature, though, you don't want to be discussing anything outside of the agenda at that meeting. You want to table it for the next committee meeting because it hasn't given the public a chance to know that that's what the committee is going to be talking about and maybe wanting to view the meeting to see what the discussion is. So just make sure when you're speaking of agenda items, you stick to the agenda. And if you want to speak to something else, then you would bring that to the next meeting. If it's if it's substantial. Next slide. So open meetings shall be open to the public and no person shall be excluded therefrom except for improper conduct. Notice of meetings it's published to the city's website, including the agendas and minutes. The public may record by video or audio. So we live stream to YouTube and those meeting recordings are available after the fact and live. But someone may want to come to the meeting if you're having it in person as well and record it. And that's common. And that also includes subcommittees. So subcommittees are subject to procedural bylaw and open meeting provisions. So if you are having a subcommittee meeting, it's the same process. You set an agenda, you'll post it on the website. If any member of the public wishes to attend, they may record by video or audio as well. So sometimes I think there's a notion out there that, we'll just do a subcommittee and we're not subject to those same meeting provisions, but they are. Next slide, please. Closed meetings. So the very hard to read text, I apologize. I'm gonna get close and read in. There are a number of provisions under the Municipal Act that can allow a closed meeting to take place. I'm not sure in the Environmental Sustainability Committee how many closed meetings have happened or the nature of what you might go into closed for, but I'll let you read this slide after the fact. I'm not going to go through every single section, but there are times when there might be personal identifiable information or perhaps a funding announcement from a higher level of government that is confidential in nature and they're asking you to keep it confidential, something along those lines. Those are just kind of examples of where you might be allowed to go into closed. However, our take on it is if you can go into open, go into open. So if there are matters that you can stay in open, that's our recommendation. Always go into open if you can. And like I said, A through K, there's a number of different matters in there. K was one that we was more new to this list under section 239(2) of the Municipal Act. And it says a position, plan, procedure, criteria, or instruction to be applied to any negotiations carried out or to be carried out by on or behalf of the municipality or local board. So that one's a bit broad-based. And we would just suggest that if there's anything that you need to go into closed for, certainly contact the clerk's office or perhaps our legal division, depending on the nature of the matter. And we can certainly help walk you through that. And at the bottom, it says this section of the Act is permissive, not prescriptive. Meeting may be closed for these reasons, but you don't have to be closed for these reasons. You can do things in open if, and like I said before, if it can be an open, we suggest doing it in open. Next slide. So there is one exception to where education or training sessions. So meeting of council or local board of a committee of either of them may be closed to the public if the following conditions are both satisfied. The meeting is held for the purpose of educating or training the members, and at the meeting, no member discusses or otherwise deals with any other matter in a way that materially advances the business or decision-making of the council, local board, or committee. So if it's education or training related, you can be enclosed, but we also say those are still good to have and open so that the public knows what's going on. Next slide. Electronic meetings. So I started with the clerk's office in 2019. It was September, I believe. And then the pandemic hit that following March. And what we were used to doing kind of went out the window. So they made some changes, the province made some changes to the Municipal Act to allow for electronic participation to be counted as part of quorum. Prior to COVID-19, you could participate electronically, but you couldn't be counted as part of quorum. So that change in and of itself was significant, and it is still in place today. So we've continued to, we made changes to our procedure bylaw in turn to say that we would allow participants or voting members to participate electronically and be counted as part of quorum. So today we're having a meeting. The weather was kind of yucky outside, things change. You know, you might not feel that well, but you still feel well enough to participate and you want to participate in the meeting, or, you know, a number of different reasons that might pop up for that. We encourage everyone to attend in person if they can, just because there's an element there, but at the same time, we understand that there are things that happen and come up that may require a hybrid meeting or an electronic meeting, a full electronic meeting. We started off with, it was interesting because we started off with teleconferencing, and we would have a live stream of a teleconference call. So it was the first step we took to still being able to hold meetings and still have people participate, while we investigated an electronic meeting management system, which we ended up obtaining. And now we have that meeting management system, and we are live streaming to YouTube and allowing greater observation from the public. So it's, to us too, continuing to live stream these meetings allows for more transparency and observation by the public. There's more people, watching the meetings and getting involved. So we feel that there is been an added benefit to the live stream. The one thing that we do say though is when we're advertising that the live stream is happening, if that live stream is lost or the meeting needs to adjourn, there were some instances in the past that went through ombudsman's investigations, not necessarily locally, but in other communities where one group had lost their live stream and continued to, materially advance the business of the committee, and were found to be it was no longer an open meeting. So what we do suggest is if you lose your live stream or have tech issues, adjourn the meeting, even if it's temporarily till you get it sorted out, if it's a couple minutes or something like that. But if you lose it altogether, adjourn the meeting and postpone to another time. So we do often look to those ombudsman's investigation and reports for guidance on how we should, implement best practices and things like that. So electronic meetings was a whole new thing to us, but now we've got a good handle on it. And we've added the YouTube link right into our agenda templates. So that shouldn't be an issue going forward. So that was just sort of how that all evolved for everyone's information. So. Next slide. So closed meeting investigations, I mentioned the Municipal Act provides that a person may request an investigation by the provincial ombudsman as to whether the council or board met improperly in closed session. So they investigate, provide a report, recommendations if found to have met improperly in closed session. And there have been a few times. Most recently, you saw at the last two council meetings, we had brought forth a report from the Ombudsman's office and a recommendation from our office saying, yes, we recognize these things happen, what we're doing to improve them. And that was related to that YouTube link not being embedded into the agendas, so that when you looked at an agenda in the past, you wouldn't see the YouTube link right embedded in it. So it was, how can the public know where to go to see, you know, to observe the meeting. So we course corrected immediately right after it happened, but we are going forward and always learning and always adapting to these new recommendations, and we're always keeping an eye on them to make sure that we implement those best practices. And we passed a resolution at the last meeting on how we intended to address the report. So we've just gone through that, and it was a good learning experience for all of us. And it's I can circulate some of that stuff if you'd like, if anyone's interested. But yeah, we just went through it. It was a good learning experience, and we'll keep implementing those best practices as we can. So next slide. Rules of conduct and debate. So chair presides. I imagine you'll deal with the chair stuff at some point, or I'm not sure who your chair
Shortly.
is, but
We'll be voting on that shortly.
okay, yeah. So the chair will preside. So this is a good primer for whoever your chair might be. And the board and committee meetings are held in committee of the whole. So what that means is it's not as formal as city council. So if anyone watches city council, you know, it'll be through you, Mr. Mayor, to councillor so-and-so. And when you're in a board and committee, and you're in committee of the whole, it's a bit more informal. You could have more of that informality, but we still want to make sure we're respectful and not being not behaving inappropriately. So the committee of the whole rules are more relaxed. The number of times a member is allowed to speak, those types of things are kind of managed by the chair. So if someone wants to speak on a matter more than once, or how long members speak, the chair can manage those things. Next slide. Conduct of members, we just talked about that a little bit. A member shall not disobey the provisions of this bylaw or decision of the chair on questions of order of practice or upon the interpretation of the rules of procedure. And certainly I can pass along, I always recommend we have a little cheat sheet for motions and things that I'll pass along to Emily to have available for the chair as well. And breach parliamentary decorum. So the chair will be responsible as well for making sure that the parliamentary decorum is kept. So we'll move along to the next slide. So motions, you'll often have motions from the committee, and they shall be in writing, and the operative clause shall commence with the words "resolved that" and shall be moved and seconded. So we've already had a couple in this meeting where you were, passing the agenda and the minutes, and resolved that, the agenda of February 7th, 2023 be approved, and then you'd have a mover and seconder and have a vote. A member who wishes to introduce a motion not on the agenda that is of substantive nature must introduce the motion as a notice of motion. So we were talking about this earlier, where if it's something substantive, you want to put a motion on the floor to bring it to the next meeting. That motion, though, is not heard at that meeting, because again, you didn't give proper notice to the members of the public for that topic. Next slide. The finality of the vote, so subject to a motion to reconsider, a motion once decided may not be reintroduced for 12 months. A motion to reconsider must be moved by a member who voted with the prevailing side and seconded either by a member who voted with the prevailing side or a member who was absent. So the reason for this is that if you have something on the table and it's carried or not carried, it's so that you don't just keep bringing it back every single meeting to try to readdress, or someone will bring it back at the following meeting and try to get a different outcome. However, you can have a motion to reconsider, depending on the situation. At council, we've had a few where someone has put forward a motion to consider. So if you have 9 members and say 6 of the members voted in favor of something and 3 of the members voted against it, if one of the members who voted in favor, and that's the prevailing side, wanted to have it reconsidered, they could put a motion on the floor, and they need a seconder from that same who voted in favor or who wasn't there at the meeting to help move it forward. And you still have to vote on it, right? But you can have that retabled if deemed if it's voted on properly by the committee. So just if you have any questions about that, certainly bring that back to us. No problem. We can walk through that. It doesn't for council, it doesn't happen all that often, but it has, and in the last 3 years, we've experienced it a couple times. Next slide. Relevance of debate. So on all motions, discussion must be relevant to the subject under consideration. So for both opened and closed, you want to keep the relevance of the debate focused on the agenda items or the matter at hand. Sometimes it's you could veer off and start talking about something else, and it's kind of the nature of things. You get kind of off topic, and but you want to make sure you bring it back, and the chair and the members of staff will kind of get people back on track so that you don't end up talking about things that, again, you didn't give proper notice to the public, to debate. Next slide. The quorum, so the mayor is an ex officio member of all committees, but not counted in quorum. No business shall be considered unless a quorum is present. Quorum is a majority of members, and if lost during the meeting, the meeting ends. So if you have 9 people and you lose quorum, the meeting will end. Now, if you're talking about just general information and not voting on or substantially advancing the business of the meeting, you can kind of talk a little bit about general information, but you don't want to move any business forward because then again, you're not in a proper meeting. And quorum is not lost by virtue of a declaration of conflict of interest. So if you are just on the edge of quorum and 1 or 2 people declare conflict, you don't lose quorum for that unless you're less than 2. You can move to the next slide. So the secretary shall keep minutes, record without note or comment. And this was interesting because I was a staff liaison for a committee myself for many, many years. And I used to, when I first started with the city, I'd try to write everything down and I would have all the narrative, and then you'd go back and it's like, nope, you just need the decisions of the committee. We're a corporation that makes, and the committees make decisions. You don't want to have all that narrative with it as well. Just the action items and the key decisions of the committee are what should be included in the minutes. The secretary shall provide the notice of the meetings, post minutes and an agenda to the website, perform any clerical functions as required. The chair of the committee votes. So that's a common misconception that the chair would only vote in a tie, but that's not accurate. The chair of the committee votes. And a recorded vote is where everyone votes and there's no abstentions. So say you had a subject matter that you wanted to have on the record who voted in favor or who voted against a certain motion. That's when you would call for recorded votes. You would go around the table and everyone would get called on, and you would report in the minutes who voted in which way for the motion. And a tie vote is defeated. Next slide. We talked about this. The Ombudsman of Ontario is the closed meeting investigator unless another party is selected to act as such, can review complaints about administrative actions and decisions of municipalities, and cannot overturn decisions of elected officials or direct them on public policy. But what they do is give you those reports with recommendations on how to address the situation. So certainly there are communities that have their own person who acts as the investigator, but the City of Sault Ste. Marie's is the Office of the Ombudsman of Ontario. Next slide. Excuse me. The Integrity Commissioner investigates all application of the Code of Conduct. So members of council and local boards, application of any procedures, rules, and policies governing ethical behavior, application of conflicts of interest to members of council and local boards, requests from members for advice regarding obligations under the Code of Conduct, procedures, rules, policies, or the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act, and provision of education and information regarding all of the above. We have an integrity commissioner locally, and there's a whole process in the Code of Conduct that you can read through on how to make application for that if required. The Code of Conduct is a requirement of the Municipal Act. It's established for municipal councils, advisory committees, and local boards. The Code of Conduct addresses gifts and benefits, confidentiality, use of board property, influence on staff, and improper use of influence. And the complaints alleging violations of the Code of Conduct are investigated by the Integrity Commissioner, and the results of those inquiries are reported to both council and to the local board. Next slide. So I'm not going to read off these slides, but there's one slide we'll get to. I'm just going to leave it up here just for a minute while I'm talking. The Municipal Conflict of Interest Act really relates to financial interests, both direct and indirect. So we talk about financial interests, and we want to make sure that if I'll use an example for your committee, if you're recommending to council that monetary allocation of the environmental fund. I forget the exact name of it. I apologize, Emily, but the environmental fund, if you're making a recommendation to council to use those funds for a particular purpose, and one of your members is an employee of that organization that you want to fund, that's that could be a conflict of interest where you're working for, or if you're directly owner of that organization that's going to benefit from that financial contribution, right? So an indirect, you might be an employee of that organization, those types of things. So if it's direct or indirect, you want to declare. Now, it's up to the member of the committee to self-declare their conflicts of interest. And we'll move to in open, if you declare a conflict of interest, you have to do so in writing, and we have forms for that. If the discussion starts to happen in the open meeting, a lot of members will just leave the room. You don't have to leave the room in open, but a lot of people do, just so you don't appear to be influencing the vote or the discussion. You're not required to, though, but in closed, if you are enclosed and you have a conflict of interest, you must leave. You can't be there for that. And you don't want to influence anybody's vote, before, during, or after the meeting, right? And the interest extends to the interest of family members as well. So just be mindful of that. It's not only your personal financial interest, excuse me, direct or indirect, it's also members of your family. Next slide. We talked about that. If you're absent from the meeting, you should still declare at the next meeting if you had a conflict. And the disclosure is recorded in the minutes. So you would, like Emily stated at the beginning, if there's any pecuniary conflicts of interest, you would record them in there, and then you would be noted as having a conflict on that agenda item. Again, quorum deemed constituted if lost as a result of declared conflicts, provided not less than 2. So next slide. Indirect, I'll leave the slide up for a sec, but that's again, like if it's, there's direct and indirect. So this is, I look to the bottom one, the member is a partner or a person or is employment of a person or body that has a pecuniary interest in the matter. So you may not be the owner, but you may be, you might benefit some way indirectly financially in another capacity. So, but the next slide is the one that I really want to, it's the questions that we ask ourselves to kind of self-identify if we have a conflict of interest. Do I have a financial interest in this decision, positive or negative? Does it affect my finances or those of my parent, spouse, or child? Is it indirect? Am I a shareholder, corporate officer, member of a body, partner, or employee of and that would result in indirect financial interest? And if yes, and you're not subject to exemptions, declare a conflict in writing. So if you, and those are the questions we ask ourselves to say, do we have an conflict of interest? And do not attempt to influence voting. Next slide, please. So there are some exceptions by reason of the member having a pecuniary interest, which is an interest in common with electors in general. So if the entire committee has a conflict that they share with amongst each other, like with all of them, and with people in the general public, and you all share the same conflict, then that's kind of where it's getting at. So it's not that it's just you that has that conflict, but it's shared amongst everybody. And by reason only of an interest of the member, which is so remote or insignificant in its nature that cannot be reasonably regarded as likely to influence the member. Again, conflict of interest is something that, we can always talk about at a later date. If you're having questions, you can certainly reach out again to Emily or our clerk's office, and we can try to help explain a little bit better. But again, it's up to the members to declare their conflicts. And the Municipal Freedom of Information Protection Act, Protection and Privacy Act, is to protect privacy of individuals, to provide for the disclosure of certain records upon request. So that's the FOI process. Best practice to release documents which are already publicly available, so agendas, minutes, council reports, etc. And the communications regarding the business of the municipality are considered a record, regardless of whether the device is personal or not. So we put this in there to make sure that people understand that even if you're communicating on your personal cell phone or personal email, if you're talking about city business, it's still subject and it's still considered a record. So we just make sure that people understand that point. Next slide. And I'll close with this to say that communications and surveys, we put this in there because we've had issues in the past with communication and surveys, but we want to make it clear that public input is really important to us, really important to the city, and should be really important to all our boards and committees. When you're doing surveys and communications, we want public interest and public feedback on certain matters, right? But the boards and committees are subordinate and accountable to city council. So we don't want the communications or surveys to lead out with statements being critical of city council or its members. That's not appropriate. But to go out and get feedback from the community on certain matters is completely appropriate. And we want to make sure that we do get public interest. But the committee itself is subordinate to city council. So we just want to put that out there to make sure that people understand that. But not all your feedback that you're going to get from members of the public is going to be positive in nature. And, certainly stuff that comes up, people are wanting to put their input and feedback in, and that's great. And we'll take that and bring it back and see if we can make some headway or some change, or review and consider that information as appropriate. So I put that out there to the last slide, just so you know. But I know Emily's done a great job in the past at public input, and don't really need to worry too much about this one in this group. So thank you very much. I don't know if there are any questions. I do have about a few minutes before I have to head off to another engagement. But like I said, if there's anything else that I can't deal with today, I can certainly follow up via email through Emily if necessary. I know it's a lot of information and can be overwhelming at times to receive on your first meeting, but certainly we want to make sure we start you off in the right path and make sure we do things properly.
Thanks, Madison. A really great overview. I'll just chime in while people are thinking if they have any questions. Just to echo what Madison said, it is a lot to digest. For our returning committee members, there is a bit of a learning curve, and for our new ones, you're going to have one as well. We're all continuously learning. This is a young committee. It's only been around for 2 years. So we're going to learn together. And I guess the long and short of it is, when in doubt, reach out. Hey, yeah. There's a rhyme. You won't forget it.
I like it.
So, I might, as follow-up, just send this out, the deck, Madison's presentation, to everyone again, along with the code of conduct, just for you to review if you have any interest in doing so. But like I said, you got questions, just come to me, and we'll work together.
Yeah, so absolutely. Thank you, Emily. And we're always available in the clerk's office to try to help as best we can. Or if we don't have the answers, we'll tell you where you can find them. So trying to be as helpful as possible, and just thank everyone for their time today. And I think it's going to be an excellent group, and I think there's going to be some great things done. And I wish everybody the best of luck with the committee. It's a great. I'll just say this. I wasn't going to, but it's a personal passion of my own as well. So I always look forward to seeing what the outcomes of the group are. So I will stay tuned as well.
Thanks, Madison.
Thanks, everybody.
Very good. Thank you so much. You take care.
Okay. Don't be afraid to, or don't hesitate to reach out. Thanks so much, guys.
All right. Take care. So yeah, like I said, that was a lot to digest. You have it all in your agenda review package, but I will send it out again. But as we go through different agenda items and different months of work, reach out to me, and I'll always reach out to Madison as well if anything is, a little bit foggy. So I'm going to move on here to our next agenda item, which is agenda item 7, where we talk a bit about an overview on the Environmental Sustainability Committee. So I got to share my screen here. Screen 2. Okay, everybody can see it? Very good. Okay, so I'll give you a bit of context here. So in 2007, the city had a committee called the Green Committee, and it was tasked with reporting on the city's environmental actions and plans to reduce emissions from their operations. This was a huge committee. It had like 25 staff people on it at one point, and a couple of counselors, as well as the PUC. Mark can attest to that. And it was great. But in 2019, we decided to take a bit of a shift with things. For some more context, the city received some funding from an organization called the Federation of Canadian Municipalities to increase their capacity on reducing community greenhouse gas emissions. And so later that year, council transitioned the Green Committee, which was originally just focused on corporate operations, and its funds from the committee, because that committee had a budget, to the Community Development Fund, which I'm going to talk a little bit about shortly, to create a new committee that was comprised predominantly of external stakeholders, which you all are. So in 2021, this committee came to be, and as I said, we're young. It's only 2 years old. So you are officially the second term of this committee. Most committees run for 4 years, but this committee was actually established halfway through in a council, a leadership cycle. So we're gonna hit the ground running this year. There are a variety of different roles and responsibilities for the committee, specifically to recommend project priorities and assist in the review and implementation of the city's greenhouse gas reduction plan, including reporting on progress annually. As well, reporting on the city's progress regarding energy management, emissions reduction, and environmental initiatives within municipal operations, assisting in the formulation and recommending environmental sustainability policies, plans, and practices, as well as making plans for continuous improvement. Another big role is the review and recommendation of funding applications to the city's Community Development Fund for environmental sustainability projects. And I'll talk to you about that shortly. We actually have 2 applications that came in, so we're going to be reviewing and voting on those at this meeting tonight. The committee also supports local initiatives that promote environmental sustainability and conservation of the local natural environment and ecosystems as well. And we're going to get working on this shortly after this, not today, but right away, probably starting in March, developing a list of priorities which support environmental sustainability for council consideration as part of the annual budget cycle. The budget cycle for this year was a little bit expedited because of the election. So we're going to start sharpening our pencils and start thinking about 2024, even though it's only the second month of the year. Better do it now so we can be considered when it's time to get at that table. And last but not least is create and highlight opportunities for the general public to learn about and advocate for climate change mitigation in Sault Ste. Marie. So one example I can give from last year is we actually had an international planning expert, Brent Tadarian, as well as the City of Kingston. The committee organized a webinar presentation for the community in partnership with the city's planning department to talk about parking reform, which might sound a little bit dry, but was actually very, very fascinating. And it has so many trickle-down effects when it comes to climate mitigation, the climate emergency, etc. So that's actually available on the city's website, a recording of that webinar as a side note, if anybody wants to review it. So those are kind of the long and short. It's a long list and we only meet once a month. So it's a lot, but we've got a good group. With that, I'm just going to stop sharing my screen for 1 second and pull up our agenda. I'm going to move now to item 8 of our agenda, where we're going to talk about electing a chair and a vice chair. So actually, I have to go and share my screen again to talk about what does that entail. Whoops. Okay, so Madison alluded in her review of the procedural bylaw that a committee is led by the chair. So at this meeting, we're going to select our chair and vice chair. The chair's role will be to preside over each meeting, ensuring the rules of procedure are followed by the city's procedural bylaw, and support will be provided by the staff person, which is me. The chair will assist myself in identifying items for the meeting agenda, as well as liaise with committee members as required. I will encourage all committee members to reach out to me personally, just myself via email if you have any ideas for agenda items that you want to bring forward, and we'll get them up there. We also need a vice chair or a co-chair. So in the absence of the chair, if they can't make a meeting, they will be responsible for convening and conducting meetings, again, not on their own, with the support of myself as the staff resource. So with that, I'm going to bring forward a motion. We would like to appoint a chair for this year. The chairs are appointed on an annual basis. So I would like to ask if anyone has an interest in being the chair for the Environmental Sustainability Committee for 2023. I see Donna. Wonderful. Very, very good. So if there are no other interested parties, I'm going to ask for a mover and a seconder. Resolve that Donna Hilsinger be appointed as the chair of the 2023 Environmental Sustainability Committee. Can I please have a mover? And for the new members, you just raise your hand. Okay, Eric Emelson is our mover, and I see Corey, seconder. Very good. All in favor? Very good. That's carried. Wonderful. Okay, so our second resolution that I'd like to bring forward here is to ask if anyone has an interest in being the vice chair. So in the event that the chair, Donna Hilsinger, is not available, this vice chair would be sort of our backup. Again, you won't be alone. You'll have me in your court helping you with the meetings. So does anyone have an interest in being our vice chair for the 2023 Environmental Sustainability Committee? I see Mark. Thank you, Mark. Does anyone else have an interest, or not seeing any hands? Okay, very good. So I'll read the motion. Okay, resolved that Mark Britton be appointed as the vice chair for the 2023 Environmental Sustainability Committee. All in favor? Excellent, and that's carried. Okay, well, we're breezing right along here. Okay, so I am now going to move on to agenda item 9. With your permission, Donna, I'm going to continue kind of manning the show here, so to speak. You're welcome to jump in at any time as our chair.
Thank you, Emily.
Okay, very good. So item 9 on our agenda is the Community Development Fund, which I mentioned earlier. So I'm going to go back to sharing my screen. Screen 2, share. Okay, very good. Oh, Robin, sorry. Did we get a mover and a seconder for the co-chair? I think we did, Robin. Did you get that written down, Robin?
I didn't catch the mover and seconder, sorry, but we can discuss later.
Eric and Corey.
Okay, I thought that was just for Donna, but I will apply that to both.
Oh, okay, if it wasn't, my bad. Let's do that again. Can I have a mover for Mark as the vice chair? I see Donna. Okay, can I have a seconder? Tobin, thank you. And all in favor? Okay, that's carried. Sorry about that. Thank you, Robin. Too many moving parts here. I got 2 screens. Okay, so that's very good. Okay, so back to agenda item 9. When I was going over the different roles and responsibilities of the committee, a big one is we get applications under the city's Community Development Fund. This is a fund that has a variety of different pillars, culture, social equity, and environment. And the fund that really is of interest to this committee is the Green Initiatives Program. And so this committee will recommend the allocation of funds for eligible projects or programs that support the city's environmental plans and practices. And there are a variety of pillars that we apply the funding to, including reducing greenhouse gas emissions, water quality conservation and rehabilitation, increasing energy efficiency, creating healthy and resilient ecosystems, including habitat restoration, active transportation, and waste reduction. When this fund was originally created, we actually only had 3 pillars, but we've expanded it to allow for more opportunities from the community to apply for funding. Who's eligible? Local nonprofits as well as city departments can apply. From a procedural standpoint, the applications come in to the city staff. We review them. We work with the applicants on the application, and then it comes to the committee for review. And if the committee votes in favor of that project, we then bring it to council for final approval. The budget for 2023 for the Green Initiatives Fund is $50,000. And for the first time, we actually have a bit of a reserve. Originally, any leftover funds from this fund were used towards planting trees on city property in the following year, but that resolution ended with the election of our new council. I have a hyperlink in here for the specifics about the grant application. And as I mentioned earlier, we have 2 applications with us this evening to the Green Initiatives Fund that we're going to discuss. The applicants are present as well, that the committee members can ask any questions to. Yeah, it's a great opportunity for local nonprofits and city departments to apply. So I'll maybe pause here and ask if there's any questions. I am going to go into some of the accomplishments of the environmental sustainability over its 2-year lifespan, which will drill down into some examples of projects that we funded in the past. But I'll just pause here and ask if anyone has any questions about the fund. Nairi.
Is there like a deadline? Do you get applications throughout the year, or is it just one time of the year?
Good question. So applications are accepted on a rolling basis and are reviewed until the funding runs out. So they come in. My advice is we now have more awareness about the program in the community. So if people have projects, apply sooner than later. Any other questions? Okay, seeing none, I'm going to move to agenda item 10, which is a review of the Environmental Sustainability Committee accomplishments from 2021 and 2022. So like I said, this committee came to be in 2021. So it was getting its feet wet. So we had 3 projects that came in to the Green Initiatives Fund for approval. They were total valued at $33,000, and they were recommended by the committee and ultimately approved for City Council. The first project was $30,000. It was an application from the city for a heat recovery retrofit at the John Rhodes Community Center. This is still pending additional funding, but that funding has been earmarked to that project still. $900 was also allocated to the city for our 2021 summer students. They held a Green Week, and that is complete. As well, the third and final application of the Green Fund in 2021 was from the public library here to establish a thermal camera lending program, or a heat gun. So basically, it's a tool that allows borrowers to take a look at where there might be some heat and energy loss in their home. They purchased 2 of these, and they have added it to their rental library at the library. The committee also supported a resolution for the city to apply to the Federation of Canadian Municipalities Community Efficiency Financing Grant Program, of which the city was successful in acquiring that funding and is working on that project right now. The committee also submitted a resolution submitting urban design recommendations to city planning for incorporation into the city official plan backgrounder, which is now becoming the official plan. So this is something that I talked about when I was going over the roles and responsibilities of the committee. You know, this committee will come up with a list of priorities for consideration for the city, not only from a budgeting standpoint, but also from a policy standpoint as well. Because this was the first year existence of the committee, there was a considerable amount of monies left over from the Green Initiatives Fund, and $17,000 was the remaining $17,000 was allocated to tree planting on city property in 2022 for about 100 trees. As I mentioned, this was from a 2020 resolution from City Council. Any remaining funds at the end of the year go towards tree planting, but that resolution is no longer valid as of the end of 2022. So we are now working with a reserve, a small reserve, but as it grows, it will allow us to have some more monies than what is allocated on an annual basis. In 2022, we had much more interest into the fund. More groups were aware of it. We actually had 12 applications in total, which is a nice jump from 2021. We had $90,000 of funds available to allocate towards projects, which was because we had our $50,000 that came from the budget in 2022. But as I had mentioned earlier, the city had a green committee that transitioned into this committee that we are now, and they actually had a reserve, which was allocated towards us, this committee's funds. So we had a bit of a bigger budget last year for that. The committee brought forward 4 resolutions of support to council. And as I mentioned earlier, supported the parking reform webinar with international planning consultant Brent Tadarian, as well as the city of Kingston. I've got a little infographic here showing, or rather a collage of some of the initiatives. I'll go into more detail on them, but I see in this picture a lot of smiling faces and a lot of green and blue, which is something very nice to look at, and a good tap on the shoulder for the committee for recommending some projects, everything from water quality to waste reduction, hydroponics, invasive species awareness. It was a good year. So just drilling into some more details here. As I said, there were 12 projects that were approved by the committee and council. Last year, we had a hydroponic tower garden project from the YMCA, a shoreline cleanup. The city moved forward on a catch basin painting project. It's 50% complete. You may have noticed last summer there were a couple of catch basins popping up in the downtown core with the words rainwater only. We've got to spruce up a couple and finish that up this year. We've partnered with the library on that as well to host a Library Loves Lakes exhibit with books on information about the Great Lakes and water. The Innovation Center applied for monies to work with Harvest Algoma on a hydroponics project. The Invasive Species Center held a workshop on invasives, both aquatic and land. The city got some money for a retrofit at the Greco pool. The Downtown Association partnered with Clean North to distribute reusable bags as well as some information rack cards. Conservation Authority did an LED retrofit. Clean North got some money for soil for community gardens, as well as a recycling of prescription bottles initiative. The Algoma Rod and Gun Club got some money for an LED retrofit, and the city also was allocated some monies to go towards a deep energy retrofit audit grant application. So as I said, over $90,000 were allocated, and these projects fell under, emissions reduction, energy efficiency, water conservation, waste reduction, as well as habitat restoration. So like I said, a good year. Let's see what we can do this year. Just going into some more details, and Madison brought this forward, as a committee of council, we are able to form working groups. So these groups meet together. They're comprised of at least two committee members and 3 city staff. And we can work together on some initiatives to move them forward. And I'm hoping we can get some really interesting working groups for this year. But last year we had a prioritization on active transportation. The working group, with feedback from the committee, prepared a survey that was provided to the planning department to be included in the active transportation master plan project. And we also did a bit of a spruce up on the city's active transportation webpage, which was a little bit lean. The committee wanted to see stormwater gutters painted with information about pollution. So we're moving forward on that one. And the committee led for the restructuring of the Green Initiatives Fund, the working group for incorporation of 3 additional pillars for projects for funding, including healthy and resilient ecosystems, including habitat restoration, waste reduction, and active transportation. So again, lots of information. This is our orientation committee meeting. Before we move on to the review of our very first set of Green Initiative applications, I'm going to ask if there's any questions on the history of the Environmental Sustainability Committee. As I said, we're young, but I think that's a good thing. Okay, I got to move around to see if I see any hands up. Okay, I don't see any hands up. So thanks for your attention on that regard. We are now going to move to agenda item 11, where we review our January Green Initiatives Program application projects that came in. So with us on the call today, we have Brandon Champ from Algoma University, but he's representing FH Clerg. And they have submitted an application for a tree planting project. So how this rolls is I'm going to give a quick summary on what it is that they're looking to do. And then I'll hand it over to Brandon to add anything else he would like to for an overview on the project. We will then turn it over to the committee to ask any questions, and then we will read the motion. Okay, so like I said, FH Clerg has applied for monies for tree planting. They're looking to increase green space on the school property by planting 35 trees in the playground area along the Pine Street and Cunningham Street borders. All of this information was included in your agenda package as a side note for our new members. The trees are going to be spaced out 3 meters from the fence line, approximately 5 meters apart. The application read that, the playground is currently poorly treed and offers very little shade for students playing outside on sunny days. And there's also very little shelter from cold winds in the winter. Planting trees will improve both the enjoyment of the students and also help reduce the urban heat island effects in our community, as well as contribute to climate mitigation through carbon sequestration. The trees also help remove contaminants from the air, improving air quality. Another interesting component about this project is it seeks to plant a diverse array of both deciduous and conifer tree species. So planting a diverse tree species mix will help with the canopy's resiliency, but also support local, wildlife, wild birds, and pollinators. Planting native trees is also very important to help restore the school's grounds and natural habitat. And maintaining pollinator populations is very critical in agriculture and is also essential for our food security, which is under threat from climate change. Funding from the Green Initiatives Fund will be used to purchase trees along with soil and planting materials. And this project will be run by families of students at the school in the late spring and summer of 2023. So that's kind of the Coles notes of that project. Brandon, is there anything else that you'd like to add about that initiative?
Thank you, by the way, very much for that summary. I think that about covers it. I think there's some evidence that the committee supports these types of endeavors, so I won't speak to the basic things. The other thing about the playground specifically is that it floods in certain areas, and tree planting does a good job of sort of like handling excess rain after big rainfalls, which of course can damage the grounds, make for a big mess. So it'll help with the resiliency of the playground as well. If there's any questions, I can address them.
Thanks, Brandon.
That's really all I have.
Super. Okay, so again, just for some context for our newcomers to the committee, this is where we kind of turn it over to committee members. If you have any questions from the application that you reviewed, yeah, I'm going to look for hands.
Maybe I will add one thing I just thought of. Sorry.
Sure, go ahead.
The question, but one of the sales pitches that for this particular application is that there's a fair bit of in-kind contribution, especially in people power, right? So we get a lot of volunteers coming out, and so you get a lot of bang for your buck in terms of planting 35 trees for I think the bill is just over $5,000. So I think that's a pretty efficient use of those funds based on the fact that we raised maybe half of that last year, and it was an arduous effort, and we got 8 trees planted. So I think this is a more efficient approach.
Thanks, Brandon. And I will add, just again for context for our newcomers, when it comes to Green Initiative Fund projects, we really like to look for those collaboration opportunities. We like to look for partnerships and opportunities to really grow initiatives from the past, all of which Brandon has spoken to, and you can read about in more detail in his application. So any questions from the committee before we read the motion? Okay, I see Donna, go ahead. And Eric, I see you as well. You can put your hand down.
Eric, I like Eric to go ahead first, if that's okay.
Sure, Eric, go ahead.
Okay. Brandon, I just noticed that in the map, the proposed planting locations are kind of around the outside, which makes a lot of sense. But I also liked that you did mention that, you know, planting might target flood areas. That's obviously something that struck a chord with me. So I think it's a great project, and you know, it's mostly just a curiosity question, but are there specific areas on the grounds where you're thinking of planting certain trees to mitigate some flood areas?
Yeah, so I'm aware of some of the flooding areas. Some of them go right through the center almost of between what you can see as the baseball field and then the parking lot. And there is a capacity to, depending on how we arrange the plants. The committee of the school, like the school council, will have some input into that, and they have members on it who are aware of those patterns. And also the patterns of play. There are some trees already extending down in a line. So last year we did try to plant some in some of the trickiest spots. But this will also handle some of that, at least where we've got it outlined. But even this, I think the map that I've submitted doesn't do justice to just how big the lot is. Like 35 trees, you know, like it'd be great to do, you know, twice as many ultimately. So maybe consider this as stage 1 or 2, I guess, given last year's small planting.
Thanks.
Donna?
Getting reminded of how things work and definitions of things. I think it is important for us to understand. I personally don't consider the school to be a local nonprofit. It's certainly not a city department. So Emily, how is this application fitting into the criteria around the applicants to the fund? What am I missing?
I have reviewed it with the clerk's department and my superiors, and they said that it worked. That's the long and short of it. So perhaps it requires a review of, you know, what does a nonprofit, you know, mean? But because they are not in the business for making money as a school, those were some of the parameters that were given to me when I asked my higher ups about this.
Okay. It might be something we want to take forward in terms of a definition and being more specific about what that is, because it doesn't align for me, although I completely love the idea. We should just get some clarity around that is my recommendation.
Brandon, were you going to add to that?
Well, I was going to say, I mean, maybe it matters that essentially this is an application from the parent council, right? So the parent council itself is not in some ways is not really affiliated with the school board or anything like that. So in the past for these projects, we've had to fundraise externally as a group. And of course, the parent council's chair is typically not a member of the school or the school administration. I don't know, maybe that is the reason why the office deemed it reasonable.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a member of the parent council, and I was there last year as a member when they did this, and it was just supported by the school rather than a school project per se. It was a parents' project.
We can seek clarification, Donna, on that.
Maybe just for going forward. What my second question, and this is my last one, which is, and I don't know if Brandon can answer this question, but does the public school board have a tree planting policy? Is there, are there funds within their budgets to undertake these types of things that are important for, proper outdoor space and good good environmental stewardship and all of that?
Yeah, I don't have the answer to that. Certainly when we've approached the school about these initiatives, that's not the kind of support we hear coming back. Do I think that's a mistake? Yeah, absolutely. So is this opportunistic? Absolutely. I look, but Emily will also know that I've talked about a number of places, where I'm interested in seeing trees planted around the city. This was just the one that I've been interested in and working on this year, but I planted over 100 trees at Algoma University as well. And I was pushing for planting trees close by along the Hub Trail, although that proposal, which I think I'd like to bring back at some point, will have to be delayed until the scanning process is complete in that stretch of land.
I commend your parents group for undertaking this initiative. Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, so if there are no other questions, Tobin, there we go. Go ahead.
Hi, Brandon. Good to see you, and thanks for coming tonight. Just a quick question. Has there been any discussion with school staff about leveraging the project as an opportunity to discuss with students the importance of tree planting and carbon sequestration and stuff like that?
So I don't know the breadth of that conversation, but I know last year that the tree planting was celebrated and talked about in the school and announced in the school, and the reasons behind it were discussion points. So I do think there are opportunities to make it a teachable moment, and I know that that's talked about at the school council, but I don't know if it has been for this particular project. I think those conversations were awaiting whether we would get support.
Any follow-up, Tobin?
No, thanks. That makes sense.
Okay. All right. So I don't. Oh,
Emily,
Corey, go
it
ahead.
looks like Emily. It also looks like Andrew has a question.
Oh, okay. Thanks, Donna, for catching that. Corey, do you want to go, or should we go to Andrew? Okay, Andrew, go ahead.
Thank you, Emily, and thanks, Brandon, for this submission. I was just reading through your, I guess, justification, and I was curious if you did any like actual numbers on carbon sequestration, or if that was just sort of like a general, like a tree will sequester carbon.
Yeah, so we have not done any predictions. It's a long-term carbon sequestration, but it's generally, and certainly like deep-rooted plants, deep-rooted grasslands are even considered to be very good at sequestering carbon. But trees are widely considered, and research suggests that they're better than simple mown grass at sequestering carbon. Those kinds of tended lawns have very shallow roots and with grass clippings and so on. And there's a lot of turnover without a lot of storage.
Oh, I see. Okay, so it's like a sequestration in comparison to what's currently on site. Okay, which makes sense.
It's an improvement.
Yeah, definitely. But then the other thing is about the planting. So just two things related to that. One is there going to be any, like, it doesn't look like there's many trees currently on the site. Is that correct?
Well, there's some on the south end, and of course to the south of the building is like Clerk Park, and that has some trees. But on the actual school grounds, there's not much. There's about maybe a total of 15 tops.
And the ones that you planted last year, how are they doing?
They look good.
Okay, so they're doing well. Because I just wondered if there's any like education for the youth or strategy for the planting specifically, like companions. I noticed you have a number of common like species in this area.
The strategy is informed by some of the members who've done this kind of thing before in terms of the planting and the experience of those groups. So we have people who have tree planting experience. As I mentioned that one of our volunteers used to work for the city in the tree planting and tree management area, and he's helped with that.
And then education for the like children. Is there anything geared towards that?
I hope so. It's up to the teachers to build those sorts of ties, but the opportunities will be there, right? So you're putting the trees there enables the opportunity to have those kinds of lessons, where they just don't have those opportunities without them.
Okay, thank you.
If I could jump in, these are really great insights, Brandon, and perhaps you could take them back to this committee for consideration. Like when it comes to whenever it is that you do a launch or a ribbon cutting for whatever this is, or, just share what this committee has brought forward for consideration from your group at FH Clerg, as well as, I know there's a lot of great calculators out there to even estimate, what is the potential for carbon sequestration, just to help with that conversation as well. We encourage you to just keep that.
You'll have to forgive me. Someone is banging at my door downstairs.
Okay, very good.
I apologize. I'll be right back.
Okay, Corey, I know you had a question. I can do my best to answer, or we can wait for Brandon.
Yeah, well, we can discuss it briefly, and then I can ask the question of him. My concern is the application.
Sorry, Corey, can't really hear you that clear.
Sorry about that.
Just a second, Brandon. Corey's checking his mic.
Can you hear me?
It was just a little bit blurry. Maybe try going again.
No.
Can everybody hear him? Maybe it's just me.
It was muffled before, Emily. Maybe Corey, can you say a few more words at the same time?
Talking right now. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll speak up. So I'm just looking at the application, Brandon and everybody. So it's not necessarily FH Clerg Elementary School who's submitting this. It's the parent council of FH Clerg Elementary School, correct?
Yes.
Yes.
So Brandon, in the same vein as Donna's question, just so I have a sense of things, you approached the principal of the school to see if the board would be willing to assist in this endeavor, and it was their opinion that they weren't, or did they seek some support and were turned down? Do you have a sense of that?
So I can't speak to the initiative last year because I wasn't an active member of the committee, although I engaged in help with the tree planting project and the organization of that. So I don't know the conversation that they had and whether they ruled out board support. But the tree planting is a parent council initiative that we bring to the council, and the principal sits on as part of the council, and so gives feedback and or support. Part of the confusion probably is that there's a section here on the application that says legal name of business and or organization, and so I guess I could have written the parent council, but it seemed like it was asking for FH Clerg.
Yeah, and I think it's a great initiative. And I'll be very honest. I'm just wondering, like, I don't know if this is something that, like, an ask that would have went to the school board first, and if ADSU didn't have the means or the interest, then the CSC, the school council, could have approached us. I'm just scratching my head a bit as to why ADSB isn't supporting it or wouldn't be supporting it or hasn't been asked at all. But I think it's a good initiative. But I just share a bit of the same concern, not to put words in Donna's mouth, but I share a bit of the concern that Donna seemed to express earlier. But I appreciate you bringing it forward, and thanks for doing this to the school and for the kids.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree. I mean, the perspective from someone who's been on the parent council for a while and been part of the fundraising initiatives to put play structures or whatever on the school grounds, it begs a lot of questions about the school board's support for that. But you know, I just wanted to get this done, and we wanted to get this done as a group. We want to see the grounds grown out, expanded, you know, cleaned up, improved, and we'd like to see it treed. So that's the driving force behind the application. So we saw this as an opportunity to support something that we weren't seeing support elsewhere from, support from the school board. But I get your point.
Thanks, Brendan.
Okay, are there any other questions? Okay, so I'm not seeing any. So I just had a quick call with my supervisor here at the city, and so what I'm going to propose is we, in the spirit of us being here in this meeting, we consider approving this project in principle, and in the event that there's some discrepancy on my part for understanding, we'll deal with that at our next meeting. Okay, so if there's no other questions, I'm going to read. Oh, Tobin, go ahead.
Sorry, are you about to call a vote?
Yes.
My kids go to FH Clerg, so should I abstain?
I mean, if you are you going to be gaining any financial contributions?
No, I just want to put it out there.
Yep, I think you're in the clear, but
Okay.
Thanks for bringing that forward. Okay, so again, in principle, you know, I'm going to read the resolution here. Resolved that the Environmental Sustainability Committee supports the request for funding from the Community Development Fund Green Initiatives Program in the amount of $5,479.10 for the FH Clerg Planning Project, and recommends that council approves the request. Can I have a mover, please? I see Tobin and I see Mark as our seconder. All in favor? Carried. Okay, very good. Okay, thanks, Brandon, for your time and your attention. I'll be in touch, and you're free to go.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good night.
Okay, very good. Okay, so I'm pleased to welcome Bill Cole from Clean North. We're just going to move into our next application here. They have submitted a funding application to the Green Initiatives Fund. It was included in your agenda package, and I'm going to just give you a summary of it right now. Clean North, they're aiming to increase the green space at the Sioux Area Hospital Residential Withdrawal Management Center, located on the corner of Second Line East and Old Garden River Road, by creating a white cedar forest grove and healing garden. They've partnered with the Sioux Area Hospital project team and the project landscape architect to provide 300 to 500 trees that will be transplanted from the Clean North Nursery site for the exterior landscaping of this new residential withdrawal management facility and grounds. The trees will significantly contribute to the aesthetic, spiritual, and environmental qualities of the facility. The cedars will provide green space in and around the site's outdoor healing lodge on the southwestern corner of the grounds. And they will also provide visual and noise buffers between the grounds and the heavy traffic flow on the adjacent roadways. They'll provide wind and shelter for residents and staff in the healing lodge area, as well as provide wind and visual breaks along the north and eastern edges of the site. The trees will also provide protection from runoff and site erosion and will enhance groundwater infiltration. As well, the native trees will over time restore a small portion of this current open construction site and formerly untreed weedy shoulder area of the former business of the site into a thriving, self-sustaining native species dominated forest parkland. Clean North estimates that this project will offset approximately 11 tons of carbon dioxide equivalent. As I mentioned, we're joined this evening by Bill Cole, the chair of Clean North. Bill, over to you. Is there anything else you'd like to speak to about this project before we open it up for questions from the committee?
Just to say that we have good cooperation. I've met several times with the Sioux Area Hospital and landscape architect team. We've walked the site. They are very enthusiastic. One of the reasons we approached them was because we became aware that the provincially funded development of this site met significant budget challenges. And a portion of that budget, I'm not familiar with the budget process and I wasn't involved in that, but our understanding was the exterior landscaping budget was hit pretty hard by the province. And so they were going to have trouble coming up with this part of the project from provincial funding. It was an opportunity. Clean North has these trees. We're a conservation organization, and we have one person in particular who worked for the Ministry of Natural Resources and has been involved with lots of projects. And where he has heard that, hey, there are some trees available, he's volunteered and got another Clean North volunteer to basically recover those cedar trees and plant them at a safe site, establishing a nursery over the last 15 or 20 years. And so we have these trees available, ready to go, and we're willing to contribute the trees at no cost, and we'll organize the labor through our volunteer contact lists over a period. Our planting schedule, and worked out in conjunction with the construction project team, is for planting in September, October. So we'll catch the fall planting season this year over a 4 to 6 week period. I think that's all I have to add of that. I'm happy to answer questions.
Thanks. Anyone have questions for Bill? Donna.
Thank you, Bill. You answered the first question I had off the hop, so I don't have to ask you why there wasn't money in the original construction budget to supply something that would be so integral, in my thinking, certainly, to a site that would work well to deliver the services that it's there to do. Can you help me understand? You mentioned several partners. The money that you're asking for here is to pay for the transportation and the planting of the trees. The other partners who are there, like Sioux Area Hospital and Soudan, et cetera, are they contributing? Is the cost of this project larger than this $9,000? Are they contributing either in kind or with other funds to do this?
There's no other direct funding coming in, and the only funding we're seeking is to rent a small tractor from a local rental agency, Service Rentals, a Bobcat skid steer with treads on it, so that we can access our site and not have to dig the trees up by hand, which is the typical Clean North way, is we would just brute force them. Some of these trees are 4 or 5 meters tall, and they're going to be several hundred pounds. So we're trying to move, we're going to really strive to get 500 of those 800 trees that we have in this plantation moved. Many of them are about 1 meter to 2 meters tall. And so to get back to your question, there's no direct funding coming into the project from any of the other partners. We still have to work out with them. This is an active construction site that's governed by Ministry of Labor. I am not an expert. I know there are complications of me bringing a volunteer crew onto an active construction site that's managed by a general contractor. The landscape architect and the planning committee, the Sioux Area Hospital Planning Committee, have not been able to provide me with details yet of how we're going to integrate with the Soudan company as the general contractor. We probably can't come onto their site as Clean North with our volunteers as a subcontractor. That gets into all kinds of complicated labor things. So what we've done is timed it in conjunction with their team so that the exterior portion of their project is essentially completed. They're estimating by June. We won't be on site until September. So we hope to have cleared up any conflict, and we will be on site as a volunteer organization, and it'll be separate and distinct from the construction project, and we won't be a subcontractor. We do not know yet whether Saldan or the Syria Hospital is going to be able to provide a piece of equipment, basically a front end loader, to help us offload the trees and move them to the planting site, or if I'm going to have to transport our skid steer from the plantation site over to the residential facility to offload them off the trailer, get them positioned, and set down in the holes. We haven't worked that detail out yet. In the budget, I have budgeted for transport of my rented skid steer to come over to the site and do that work in case Saldan can't produce it. I think they're going to be able to, as long as it doesn't run into this subcontractor conflict that they might have. In which
So
case
it could mean the money that you need is reduced.
it could be, yep. I've put it in as enough money to get the job done if I have to do it all with my rented piece of equipment, my volunteer team. If I can offset some costs, and a few of the supplies that I've put in the budget to buy from Canadian Tire, fuel cans and ropes and things, if I can get those from our volunteers and from my networking without buying them, A, that'll lower our cost and I won't have to submit, and B, it'll lower our green footprint a little bit more, that we won't have to buy new stuff. We will do every effort to do that, but I wanted to make sure we were self-contained and it had an achievable outcome with the project funding that I asked for.
Thank you, Bill.
Thank you, Donna.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, so going to go here and read the motion. Resolved that the Environmental Sustainability Committee supports the request for funding from the CDF Green Initiatives Program in the amount of $9,259.81 for Clean North, White Cedar, Forest Grove, and Healing Garden at the Sioux Area Hospital Residential Withdrawal Management Center, and recommends that council approves the request. Do we have a mover? Okay, Corey, do we have a seconder? Nairi, all in favor? Okay.
Emily?
Yep.
In light of what Bill just said, or is it inherent in that up to 9,000, whatever the
Correct.
number was? Or that, okay, thank you.
Yep.
Yeah,
Okay.
Donna, sorry, Emily, the way this works, Clean North was a successful applicant in 2022, and we asked for a certain amount of money. When we incur the costs throughout the project, and then at the end of our project, we submit one batch of receipts and expenses and all the documentation with a completion report for reimbursement. At that time, if I have not spent the full amount, I only ask for what I can document, and the surplus is left in the green fund. Unless that process has changed, Emily, that's how it works.
That's it.
Thank you, Bill. Thanks.
Okay, very good. So thank you, Bill. We appreciate your time. I know this was a bit of a late meeting. Thank
Happy to
you,
be here.
and we'll be in touch. Okay.
Thank you very much for your support, everybody. Appreciate it.
Very good. Thank you, Bill. Okay. So item 12 of our agenda is the staff update. I'm not going to go into detail on that. All of that information was provided to you all in advance. And moving forward, because these meetings, as you've probably seen now, are quite lengthy and busy, I'm not going to go into those weeds. So I encourage you to review. And if you have questions or concerns and you want to bring them up, speak to me and we'll get there. Thanks, Eric. So our next meeting is Tuesday, March 7th. It's currently 4 to 5:30. Hybrid is always an option, but we're really encouraging people to attend in person if it's at all possible. I've sent out a doodle poll, and I encourage you to fill it out. We'll shorten the meeting to 1 hour if need be, to encourage everyone to attend. This committee has yet to meet in person because it was created during the pandemic, and it'd really be great to just, get together in one room. So with that, I'm going to ask for a motion to adjourn. Can I have a mover, please? Okay, Tobin, seconder, I see Donna, all in favor? Very good. Okay, this meeting is adjourned. Lots on the go. Thank you for your time. I'm sorry we went over. Look forward to working with you all.
Good night, everybody.
Good night. Thanks, Emily.
Night.
Thank you. Take care. Bye.